background sound noise to the fan. Oh, sorry. Just testing that. Dengan icon. Check. Then noise suppression. Okay. Using a better noise suppression filter. Three minutes left. Two minutes left. $30 seconds. Alarm. Oops. Hello, welcome to LiveWIRE Stream episode 3. Slides. Okay. Just checking video quality, audio quality, the slide readability, chat functionality. Just check out the chat, say hello, and device check. Testing. Okay. Okay, cool. I'll just apologize. Originally, it was supposed to be legal considerations when starting a business in Brunei, but we've had uh, legal technicalities. So we're postponing it to next episode. So we're switching episode 4 and 3. So welcome to LiveWIRE Stream, episode 3, sources of funding. What I'll be talking about is about the series and myself initially, and then talking about the sources of funding. We'll start with purpose of funding, types of funding, sources of funding, preparations for funding, and then shall level resources that's relevant to funding, and at the end Q&A and just chat. So, introduction. For those who have just joined us, so this is the introduction to the stream itself. So this is intended for a series of entrepreneurship topics, basically summarized versions of the usual workshops and talks that we do at LiveWIRE. And the snippets from these videos will be used for video content for online referral. Some people have requested if some of the contents could be online so that they can refer to it. And the topic shared, as mentioned, is a summary of the workshop contents. So if you want to have the full workshop experience, so sign up for our LiveWIRE workshops. Just check LiveWIRE Brunei website at livewirebrunei.com or IG at LiveWIRE Brunei. And I will try to have some discussion and Q&A between topics. So if you have any questions at any time, just type it up and I'll look at chat in between topics, and then we'll discuss those questions if you have any. And of course, you may share the live link to anyone that you know that might be interested in this topic. Okay, moving on. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Muhammad Tudun bin Haji Hassan, alias Muhammad Hasbullah Bobby. I am the business counselor at LiveWIRE Brunei, but I'm also an entrepreneur, an endurance athlete, an enthusiast. So I love to research. I love to find out more about business, IT, and science. And I'm also an educator. I like to share almost everything that I know with other people. So this is the planned content for the whole series. Again, note that we've switched March and April. So originally, legal considerations was supposed to be in March, and April was sources of funding, but we've decided to switch it due to legal technical issues. And yeah, that's the 12-month program, but of course we'll try to stick to as much as possible. So now moving into preparations and shall level resources. So first and foremost, introduction. So purpose of funding. Okay, why would you start So why do you need funding? So the first and foremost, obviously, is starting up the business. You need funds to start the business, and then in certain businesses there are a few projects. Examples are if you're in development. So when you make a new building, then you'll need funding for that new project, and then you might also have new products and services that you want to launch, or certain events that you want to join, and then you might need an additional funding for those products and services and projects. And then, of course, you might want to expand and grow faster than what you can have now. One way of expanding is just using whatever resources you have now, and then cycle it back into the business so it can grow. But using additional funds, you can actually grow that business faster than you would have using your own funds. And then there's maintaining your cash flow. This is usually when you're doing a project and then you have an opportunity for another project, and then somehow your funds are low, or if you have a project but you haven't been paid yet, so you might need to get fundings to maintain the cash flow. This is quite common when you're doing contracts with other businesses or with government sectors. So you're not paid as early or as soon as you expected. So you need to get funding as soon as possible to maintain your cash flow, to in order to pay your salary, rentals, and so on. In order to you for you to continue business, and then of course, when you once you get paid, then you can pay back that cash that you borrowed in the first place. So I'm curious, why are you looking for funding? If you are looking for funding, that is. So just share in the chat, if you are looking for funding, what specific reasons are you looking into to get funding? While waiting for your answers, I'll just carry on with the next topics. So types of funding. So in order to look into fundings that you can get, you need to understand the basic types of funding. So there are three. There's debt funding, equity funding, and grant funding. Debt is basically you borrow money and then you pay it back in a certain amount of time. There's a schedule and with interest. Although in Islamic banking, there's a similar concept, more on profit sharing. And then there's equity, where you get partners or investors that provide you with the cash to start the business, but they will ask for a share of the business, a share of the profits of the business. Of course, sometimes this might be combined with debt equity as well. So once you pay back that initial fund, then you are no longer you're no longer obligated to pay off the investor with the profit sharing. But in general, equity is just having a share of the business. And then there's grants, where the money is just given without any obligations. Any main obligations anyway. So usually this is from governments and so on. We'll look into each one and then the advantages and disadvantages. And okay, so just checking on the chat. So one person is looking for funding in order to expand their business. Okay, so let's look at that. So an example for that. So in general, the example here is 10,000. You borrow money from the bank, 10,000, and then the bank usually charges an annual interest. In Brunei, that's usually about 4.5 to 8.0 annual interest to be paid monthly or annually. And then, of course, the principal is to be repaid within a certain amount of time. In this case, 3 years after 6 months grace period. So grace period is usually the time where you're okay, you're allowed not to pay back, and then after you have to pay it back in 3 years, or 4 years, or 7 years, or 10 years, depends on the bank's terms and conditions. So we'll look into the banks later. Of course, there's advantages and disadvantages. So in that funding or financing, you still own the business, although you owe money to the bank, but the bank doesn't own your business. And it's predictable because there's always a schedule. So you just follow that payment plan. And then relationship ends at the repayment. Once you finish off paying off, then that's it. So you're no longer obligated. And if the business succeeds, then it's cheaper than equity. Your 20% profit will still be 20% profit, regardless of how much you owe the bank. You still, once you finish off paying the bank, it's still going to be 20%. And then, of course, there's the discipline in paying off the debts. So again, it's legally required for you to pay off that debt. The disadvantages is, in most cases, from banks, usually it's they require collateral or other qualifications or other guarantees. If you don't pay back, there are legal consequences. So you have to pay back monthly. Worst off, they can actually cause you to bring you to court, and then might cause you to be bankrupt, and then you cannot loan anymore from the bank or any banks for that matter. And of course, disadvantages, if you don't have the discipline, then this is going to be a bit of challenge. Okay, and then the second one is equity. This is again where you have investors who own a share of the business. So in this example, still 10,000, but instead of the interest, now it's 10% ownership. So if you're giving 10% of ownership for 10,000, you might have seen this in Shark Tank, where they usually say something like 200,000 for 20% profit share, or 20% of equity. So in this case, if they're giving away 10% of ownership for just $10,000, that means they're valuing the company for 100,000, whether it's current value or future value. So the investor once agrees, then becomes a partner, often gets a seat at the board, or the management, and then takes on the risk of the business. But they also get a profit, of course, and investors get return through an exit. Either they are bought off from another investor, maybe with a bit of profit, or in other countries you don't often hear this in Brunei, is IPO, initial public offering. And then there's of course dividends, or the profit sharing. Usually most dividends are paid off either monthly or quarterly. So those are the things that you have to pay the shareholder. So you have every profit that you get, they will get a share of that. So in this simple example is 10%. So if your profit was 20% of the business, then 10% of that 20% goes to the that partner. And then let's look at the advantages. So the advantages is there's no obligation to pay back if it's through pure equity funding. So most investors that just look through the equity, they don't necessarily want you to pay back, not directly the principal anyway. It's mostly they mostly want the profits from that business. And in some cases, there's no need for collateral or credit worthiness. Usually, it's a matter of trust, whether they trust you, or trust your company, or trust your background. And it's usually when interests are aligned. So the investors and the business owner have common interests that they want to reach. So it's possible even that investor wants to do that type of business, but they don't have the time or the resources to do it. They have the money, but they don't have the time or effort or energy to do it anymore. So instead of them doing it themselves, they'll be willing to fund a business owner to do it for them. And then another advantage is learn and gain from partners. Whether it's the investor or the business owner, one can learn from each other. It's not just one way, it's both ways. And it's a positive signal to the market. So when there's interest in that business, when a lot of investors are into that business, it's a positive sign that that type of business has a market. So it's good for new entrepreneurs to go into into similar industries. Also, a good signal for investors to go into same industries. And then there's disadvantages. There is a loss of control. So the previous example was 10%, but it's not uncommon to have 20%, maybe even up to 50%. A good example would be Warren Buffett. If I'm not mistaken, he owns, or at least Berkshire Hathaway owns 49% of the Coca-Cola company. So whatever he says is basically done because he owns a majority of that business. So you lose control. Once you have a partner, you lose control about 50%. If it's 50%, then you lose 50% of the control of the business. And of course, the profits also you have to share. So again, if it's 50% of the profit share, then out of the 20% profit, then 50% you have to share. So you have less profits for yourself. And then it's a binding relationship, even if it goes sour, even if the business goes bad. So you still have obligations. It's slightly different from obligations to the banks that in most cases there might be some paperwork. But it's usually a sort of friendship or a relationship. So you still have that relationship. So just imagine if friends were into that relationship, investor and business owner relationship, and then if it goes sour, then it's bad for the relationship itself. Okay. Lastly, we'll look into grants. So in general, it's when a company gets money, usually from governments. Unfortunately, Brunei does not allow government grants, but there are some. Previously, there were a lot. So now there's a few. We'll share that later. So usually there's grants to support R&D or research and development, and in general grants, companies don't have any obligations to pay off that debt, other than to use that money for research, okay, research and development. And in most cases where grants are involved, the body that provides the grants will request for a progress report, whether it's monthly or quarterly or yearly. Now, looking at the advantages and disadvantages. So advantages, there is no obligations to pay back. And in general, there's no collateral required or creditworthiness. Again, because you don't have to pay back. You technically keep ownership of the business or the project. And then there's a waterfall effect. Once you receive a grant and you have good results from the grant, it's relatively more easier for you to get more grants, because either from the same source or from new sources. And again, similar to investors, there's a positive sign to the market. And in this case, if it's a government grant, then it's a good sign, good support from the government itself by providing the grants. Now, there's also disadvantages because it's free. A lot of people, well, free in terms of you don't have to pay much to get it. So there's a high competition. So it's almost like applying for a tender. So there's a lot of people who will be going for it as well. Although in Brunei, I would say there's not a lot because most people don't know about it, or they don't think they can apply for it. Because the second point is time consuming applications. There's a lot of processes that you have to go through, a lot of forms that you have to go through. You have to comply with the requirements. So there's a lot of government bureaucracy, or if it's government, then government bureaucracy. But if it's a corporate, then it's corporate red tape. And then there's a danger of undisciplined spending. So people take grants for granted. In most cases, grants, they're just given the cash itself. The misuse of the funds is easily done. Uh, uh, okay, finally, there was a mention of no obligations to pay back, but there are usually strings attached. So in some cases, you have to use a specific government location, you have to do business or projects in specific sectors, you have to hire specific people. So in Brunei, usually it's like you have to, well, if it's government grants, it's highly recommended that you use a government facility, and you go into a specific sector, whether it's manufacturing or export, and then you have to hire locals, and in some cases, no foreign workers are allowed. So that's looking at the types of funding. So based on the three, debt funding, equity funding, and then grant funding, which one would you prefer? So that's the question I have. Just share your answer in the chat. I'm just curious, how many people do we have? Okay, not so much, 5 people. That's fine. Let's see a few of those answers. So I'm just going to continue while you answer that question. So what type of funding do you prefer? So now we're going to look into sources. So not to be confused, because it's easy to confuse between the sources and the type of funding. So I would also like to check what sources of funding do you know. So before I fill this in, so what sources of funding do you know? Most people, I would bet, knows banks. Okay, that's basically what most people know, either or family members who give or help them with starting up a business. So what sources of funding do you know? So I'll just continue on. Okay, so these are my categorization of the sources of funding. So you have owner's capital, that means self-funded. You have your own cash, you use your own money to start your business. And then you have investors, usually friends, family, angel investors, and VCs or venture capitalists. And then banks, the common ones we know, BIBD, Baidri, and Bank Usahawan. There are others that are in the list, later I'll share. Then there's grants. Again, in Brunei, there's not a lot of grants, and and the few that there are, there's very few people who know about them. So this is just my sharing on where I know there are grants in Brunei. Okay, and then finally, crowdfunding. Some of you might have heard of Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and there's actually a local crowdfunding platform now. A few years back, they started, but they had to go through the government processes. So I think just last year they were able to launch publicly. So we'll look into that later on Jana Capital. So let's again look back at the types of funding and the sources. So as mentioned, so don't confuse the types of funding with the sources. So in general, investors, when people say investors, it's usually equity funding, but some investors are also debt funding, as in they act as a bank. So well, they put money in and they expect a certain amount of profit, and they expect the money back by a certain point. But in some cases, some investors are just okay with just equity. As long as there's a profit in it, they'll just continue having a share in the company. And then banks, in general, is just funding. But certain banks do have not facilities but projects where they provide funding in terms of grants to people who need it. I think under BIBD there's the seed fund. It's for self-employed single mothers. So that's a bit of a grant type there. And then of course there's grants. There's only grants. There's no debts. There's no equity. And then crowdfunding depends on the crowdfunding platform, depends on what the crowdfunding project or your business requires. So it could be that where that in terms of well, products. So you're actually buying a product, so or you're selling a product. You're selling a product, but they don't have it yet. So you owe the customers the product. So technically it's that. And then there's a few funding platform where they offer a share of the business. So that's equity crowdfunding. If I'm not mistaken, the Jana Capital follows this type of crowdfunding, the equity crowdfunding. And then finally, there's the grant type where there's no obligation required. It's just basically donation. So people donate to help you start your business or start your project. Okay, so just a quick look into owner's capital. So again, this self-funded, and usually some people might be doing business while they're still working, so they're supported by their job. This is quite common where some government officers have their own business, so they use their government job to fund their own business. And then the savings, whether it's your current savings or in the future savings where where you have more money, and then you can use it to start your business. And then some people wait until they retire, then they'll use their pension fund. So I know some corporates have severance pay or severance package, and in government there is previously there was the boxes. So some people use that fund to start their business. Right now we have the TAP and SAP, so we can't really touch that until 55 or 60. So we can probably use that in the future, but starting a business that late is not really advisable. And then there's bootstrapping. So bootstrapping in general is a technically new term that basically just means self-funded. So when you look up bootstrapping, it's just a matter of doing business as cheap as possible with whatever money that you can use to run the business. So especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people have difficulties in running a business. So we have to be creative in running the business and have to bootstrap. So in general, again, bootstrapping means starting and managing a company at least temporarily without external investors. So in this case, using personal savings if you have a savings account, and then using your own personal liabilities. So some people find it difficult to get loan from the bank, so they'll probably use either the credit card debt, or if they're already working, they might be able to use their personal loans. This is not recommended. I'm not telling you that you should do this, but I'm telling you that this is what people have done. So instead of using a business loan, they just do a garage sale, whatever things that you don't need. This is like the worst case scenario. And then there's the option of working part-time. So freelancing. So again, whether it's they have a job and then running a business on the side. Some people, I've met a few people in Singapore, they have 2 or 3 jobs. while supporting their business. And then with luck, cash coming in from the first sales to turn over the business. Okay, now let's look into investors. So in general, the simplest investors that you can get are your friends and family. And then, of course, there's the angel investors, and then there's venture capitalists. Let's look at them one by one. So friends and family. So you might know someone personally that can help you in your business endeavor. So in this case, think of a rich uncle. I wish I had a rich uncle who's willing to help me start my business. But on that note, I did start my business borrowing money from my sister. So it was just $700 to start the food store business. So these investors usually have little or no knowledge of your business or industry and investing in your company because they want to support you. They normally, hopefully, do not get involved in the business. They just give you the money and then they just let you go, and whether you give them profit or you pay them back. And to avoid problems in cases the business fails, make sure you are completely clear about the risks of the venture and that you make them comfortable to turn down your investment offer. So this is a recommendation. So don't try to be forceful on getting someone to help you fund your business. So no pressure, or else it will be bad for your relationship. Quite a lot of people, I think, start the business with friends and family investors. And then there's angel investors. Uh, the wording angel obviously means something good. Something it feels like someone who's gonna give you money, just start your business. So in general, it's a high net worth individual who provides capital for a startup, usually in exchange for a convertible debt or equity. So we mentioned this already. So it starts with equity, and then some people might turn that into a convertible debt. So again, once you pay back, then you don't owe them any profit sharing anymore. Angels usually give support to startups at the initial moments when risks are very high and when other investors are willing to. Angel investors are often successful entrepreneurs or executives themselves, ideally in the relevant industry, who can provide mentorship and context on top of money. As mentioned, some investors they don't have any more. They have the money, but they don't have the time or the energy anymore to do a business. So they are often ex-entrepreneurs that they've already been successful in doing business, and then now they invest in other projects. I would say the good example would be like Elon Musk and Bill Gates. They've been successful in their own business. Now most of the time, Bill Gates now most of the time is just in doing investments, sometimes in non-profit activities. But Elon Musk invests in other small projects, but sometimes he takes over those small projects, become his own. We might know a few of angel investors in our life. There are probably angel investors in Brunei. I have met a few, but most of the angel investors in Brunei, they prefer to be low profile. So in order for you to get an angel investor, you have to network, get to know people, join events. And even if you even better if you can get recognized by joining competitions and you get recognition, sometimes the angel investors themselves will contact you for a business opportunity. Okay, and then finally, venture capital firms, or VCs. So in Brunei, there is no official VCs yet, because they have to go through previously AMBD, but now it's Brunei Darussalam Bank of Brunei, BDBC, BCBD. I forgot what's the name now, but previously it was the Authority for Monetary of Brunei Darussalam. Now it's the Central Bank, I think, Central Bank of Brunei Darussalam, so CBBD. So they have to go through that. They have to get approval. Then they can become a venture capital firm in Brunei. But otherwise, you can probably get VCs that are available in other countries such as Malaysia and Singapore. So VCs are generally a firm that provides equity financing, sometimes convertibles, to startup that have been deemed have high growth potential and which have demonstrated initial traction. So there's a lot of interest in that type of business. Sometimes it looks risky, but it looks interesting. A good example will be Uber or Grab. So there's a huge growth potential, and there's a lot of people who use that. So that's why Uber and Grab have had a lot of investments initially. So VC funds invest in later stages than angels. So angels really invest in more proven ideas, while banks will only well, most likely invest in more proven ideas. But still will take substantial risk in the hopes that some of the startups they will support will become successful. So the VC managers usually ask to have a seat at the board so that they have a say of what to do. Because in general, they would have more experience in making a business more successful. So they would want to make sure that that the business is doing well according to their expectations. Okay, in next part, I'm just sharing on how to find your investors. So the first one is friends and family. So first, know exactly how much you need. You can't just say, can you give me some money? They'll most likely will ask you, how much do you need? So you have to be ready with that number. So make a list of potential investors based on net worth and relationship and personality. So looking at your family and friends, who do you think has the money to help you? So sometimes it's the quiet guy. Yeah. So so yeah, angel investors, there's plenty. Yes, especially if you have the network. So if you have the network, you get to know a lot of angel investors. Even when there was I think it was a forum with investments, about investments or how to get investments. There was a few angel investors that were there. But again, if you don't network, then you wouldn't know most of them. So what was I? Okay. So make sure that you know who your potential investors are, and then prioritize those who might help. So the ones who are more likely to help, or the one who have more resources. Then approach them professionally. If it's like one to one, talk to them privately, like you have an idea, and then I would say don't just do a presentation right there and then. Maybe you can set up an appointment, like minum coffee, have a drink of coffee to set up a more in-depth discussion, and then think through the instrument options as mentioned, whether it's equity, debt, or convertible. And then this is just so that you're not rude. Make them comfortable to say no. And if one doesn't cover investments, consider a few. So if one investor is not enough, then consider a few. And something's wrong with my slide here. I'm not sure. I'll just skip that. Make sure that they can afford it. So this is very important, especially for your relationship with the prospective investors. Don't force them, and if they invest, make sure that they can afford it. That they're not losing their nest egg, their their whole pension fund, or their whole savings. So general wisdom in investing or investment is don't invest any more than you can afford to lose. And of course, be 100% transparent about the risk. So in your presentation or in your discussions, make sure that they know the risk. So at least they don't complain later, oh, you didn't tell me about this. So make sure that you tell them about it. Okay, and we're talking about angel investors. So where to look for angel investors? So look close to home. Okay, so your friends and family, your network. So you can look around, and then you look at CEOs or CFOs of business. Sometimes they themselves are angel investors, or they might know a few angel investors themselves. Look for groups and associations. In Brunei, there's a few associations. Interestingly, it's like the Chinese Chamber of Commerce, the Indian Association for Business. Was it Indian Chamber of Commerce? Something like that. So most of the foreign countries have embassies or chamber of commerce that have an organization where they can get a group of angel investors. So the Malay one will be the say DPPMB, or Dewan Peniaga Melayu Brunei. So again, get into those groups, so get to know more people, and then you can find the angel investors, or at least they know angel investors. And then join angel investor or pitch events, such as I'll just advertise LiveWire. LiveWire, we have our upcoming business awards competition, and we also have a hackathon soon. So from there, you might be able to expose yourself to find more angel investors. Then look at incubators and accelerators. So a good example will be DARES, Darussalam Enterprise Accelerator Program. So there's usually an opportunity in there to meet up with some angel investors. Then there's universities and in this case business schools or tech departments. So I would say UBD has a good entrepreneurship program as well as IBTE. So from there they usually provide you a lot of experience and education in order for you to start business. But in some cases they do invite judges or participants um, people again forums, participate in forums, so they might be angel investors as well. And then of course there's online resources. So most online resources will point out in angel investors outside the country. So in Brunei there's not a lot. If you know an online resource of angel investors in Brunei, just share. So how to approach them. So look for warm introduction first. If not, cold call is okay. So warm introduction as in you if you were introduced to that angel investor by someone, get that someone to introduce you to that angel investor. Okay, if you know someone that knows that person, it's better, it's easier, it's more relaxed, more comfortable. So get someone to introduce you to that angel investor. But if there's none, then cold calling or cold contact is also okay if it's no other choice. And then have an elevated pitch always ready in your mind. So basically a few sentences that describes your business, and if they're interested, then you can set up an appointment to meet up with you with the angel investor, so that they'll find out more. And sometimes have your pitch documents or your pitch deck ready to share. So some people even just stand by on their mobile phone or their iPad and then just share on the spot. Or they just give a link, they get the contact and then provide a link to check out their pitch deck. So that's how to find your investors. And here I'm sharing angel investors examples. So you can Google this up. You can probably like screenshot this and then Google some of them. For interests in Brunei, so I think I can't remember which one has actually an option for Brunei, but you can look on the lower right corner for Southeast Asia. Otherwise, just look at the other details up. Okay, now those were mostly on investors. Now let's look at the banks. So here I'm listing down BIBD, Baiduri, Bank Usahawan, Standard Chartered Bank, and Taib. So a lot has changed in the past, I would say 10 years. First time I looked into funding in Brunei was around 2005 when I was just finishing up UBD and I was looking into business. So a lot of the terms and conditions have changed. The financing products have changed. And I think the most obvious one is Bank Usahawan. Bank Usahawan didn't exist until I think 5-7 years ago. So there's a few changes. So let's look at the banks. So I've actually browsed the website, and I'm just basically sharing what I found on the website. So if you are interested to find out for yourself, you can just look into the websites. So in general, again, banks provide loans or the debt funding, and they're extremely risk averse. That means they don't like risk, and usually only loan to companies that can prove they have collateral and ability to pay back. So this is the irony of most banks. They only borrow you money or lend you money if you can pay back. So a lot of people complain if they have the money in the first place, then they wouldn't want to loan. But some rich people would say when you do business, you use other people's money. You risk other people's money first, than to risk your own. So that's one consideration. So again, they highly will lend to people who have the collateral and the ability to pay back, whether it's from the revenue or from the prospective business or receivables from existing projects or tender awards. So it's more suitable to companies that have already broken up, even as in they already well, businesses that are already running. So usually they'll require like 6 months or 12 months existence and to show that the business is going fine. So it has predictable cash flows, low risk, and tangible assets. So these are mostly businesses that are already running, SMEs, but not startups, unfortunately. There was a while back, BIBD had the SME Startup Fund. I'm not sure if you contact them, but from their website, they don't have that anymore. So when you approach banks, I'll be sharing what I research on their website. So you can just check their website. You can there's usually a phone number for you to call. In some cases, there's a chat option. You see later, or an email address that you can email them. And in some cases, that's the only information that they give. So you'll see that later. So if you have to, or if you want to, you can visit the headquarters, the office, or the business center. Usually they are friendly enough that they are willing to brief you on the requirements. So they'll discuss about the financial products, the terms and conditions, the repayment conditions, and then the documents required in order for you to apply. And you'll see later that most of the general requirements of of these banks are they usually only loan to businesses that have existed or registered at least 1 year. Sometimes they ask for 1 or 2 years financial statements to show that money has gone in and out. And in some cases, you may be required to provide guarantees or collateral. So again, just in case you can't pay back, well, if you can't pay back, then how will you be able to pay back? Okay, so let's look at the bank. So we'll start off with BIBD, or Bank Islam of Brunei Darussalam. So you can look at bibd.com.bn, and then you'll see the financing offered. So the terms are not available here, but if you go to the banks, usually they have leaflets that provide you with the information. I've attended a few talks from not just attended, but also hosted talks from banks. So they share the terms and conditions that they provide for the financing. But funding from in general. And again, wouldn't want to put words in their mouth, but previously what I've heard is usually the approval takes about a few weeks to a few months. So in general, you can get the funding relatively quick as long as you fulfill their requirements, as mentioned, existing business and so on. And then there's Baiduri. By refinancing, so again, you can go to byduri.com.bn, and then you can look for the business financing. So there's the financing section. You can see that you can get short-term and long-term capital to expand your business. Now on the right side, I'm showing the eligibility criteria. Okay, so this is in general, it applies for almost all their products. If not, it's just the same copy paste. So as mentioned, they'll require a proof of your existence, so a minimum of 1 year in business operations. And here they have a minimum of 100,000 in business annual turnover. That means you basically have 100,000 sales per year. In general, that's almost 10,000 sales per month. So they usually just provide for existing businesses that are already profitable. And then the required documents you might see is the business proposal or the business plan, and the statements for the past 12 months. So again, proof of the operations and proof of your money going in and out. And then the business registration form, whether you're a sole proprietor or Sendirian Berhad, and supporting documents such as the quotations that you need to expand your business, to renovate your company, to purchase the assets and whatsoever. And again, you can look around the Baidu website, and you can look at the types of financial products. So there's a few here. So one on the left is working capital. So generally, basically your monthly expenses that you need to pay off, or maybe the salary rental that you need to borrow money for a while, or it could be accounts receivable on the far right. So you do have a project, money is coming in, but they haven't paid you yet. So you can get loan from the bank to pay your expenses first, and then once you get paid from your customer or clients, then you can pay off that debt. Okay, next is Bank Usahawan. So this website, I didn't put the link there. So it should be bankusahawan.com.bn, but I'll double check later. Unfortunately, the details is not a lot here in terms of what they require from you. But here in the website, they provide finance for fixed assets or working capital. And depending on the financial product, you can get 500,000 to 750,000. And then the repayment can be 4 months to 5 years. So 4 months is usually like for short projects that you need funding for. So the ones I've seen is example gerai perayaan gerai Ramadan. So it's only a 1 month project. So they're applying for that funding for that project. And then they get it. Then once they're profitable, they paid off within 4 months. But if it's a bigger project, then 5 years, depending on the project or how much it costs and how much it needs to be repaid back. And the profit rates, so again, Islamic Bank, they don't use the word interest, they use the word profit rates or profit sharing. So here is ranging from 6% to 10% depending on the agreement. So that's Bank Usahawan. Then we have Standard Chartered Bank. This is quite surprising for most people because they used to have a lot of business loans, but now they're limiting it to a certain group of people. So as you can see in the eligibility, so business type is sole proprietor, and others and Bahad and so on. But here's the most difficult part is they require minimum 3 years of business operation. So there's not a lot of people who can apply for this. So only if your business is already up and running and it's sustainable, then you can apply for the financial products from Standard Chartered. But the documents required is just like 6 months bank statement, 2 years audited statements, and then other information from the relationship manager of the bank. So again, you can check the Standard Chartered Bank. So it's the global one, Standard Chartered, se.com, but there's a /bn. So se.com/bn for the Brunei Standard Chartered. Then Tabung Amanah Islam Brunei, technically not a bank. It's more of a foundation, I think. So interesting, they do have corporate financing. So you can see on the left, the financing offers funding for asset acquisition to buy your fixed assets, your working capital, uh, and for short-term projects. Now, if you look on the right, that's the documents required. It's a letter, so you have to write a letter and a business plan, and then you have to be a registered company or a limited company. If you're a limited company, there's a lot of requirements for you to apply from type. So again, in general, these are for businesses that already are already up and running. I think wait, this it. Okay. Okay. Now out of banks. Now we look into grants. So as mentioned, there used to be a few more grants than we have right now. But the ones I can share with you are the following. And in these cases, I know of them because of LiveWIRE having collaborated with them with a few projects. So we have Yayasan Sultan Jason Bolkiah, Ministry of Culture of Youth and Sports, or KKBS, or MCYS. And then there's the DARE, Darussalam Enterprise Co-Matching Grant. And just to put it up there, US Embassy sometimes provide grants, but mostly for non-profits. But I've seen a few companies that take advantage of the grants, but to do non-profit activities or events. With Yayasan Sultan Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah, you can check on the website. They provide the information, but in order for you to apply, you have to be the underprivileged or the low income. So then you can apply for this funding. So on the left, I'm just sharing a snippet from the website information about the funding. So that's under, you can see on the first point, bantuan memperhatikan taraf sosioekonomi golongan yang kurang kemampuan. So I think it's there on the bottom there, program keusahawanan. So entrepreneurship projects and small business. On the right, I'm just sharing one of the batches that got the grants. So in general, they try to have grant batches about 3 to 4 times a year. And how LiveWIRE is involved with them is the training that we provide. So the training we provide is the Bright Ideas Workshop and the Business Plan Series Workshop. So specifically the Business Plan Series Workshop is in order for them to be able to write up a business plan so that they can apply for the funding from Yayasan Sultan Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah. And then we have Kementerian Kebudayaan Belia dan Sukan, or KKBS, or in English it's Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports. So there's a few departments, but in general is JAPIM, Jabatan Pembangunan Masyarakat, the Community Development Center, and the Youth Development Center or the Pusat Pembangunan Belia. So they work together in terms of pekerjaan dan keusahawanan, or employment and entrepreneurship. So in general, you have to apply. The easiest route is if you join the Pusat Pembangunan Belia or the Youth Development Center. From there, you learn a few skills, whether it's in, I think, tailoring or aircon maintenance or something, some vocational skills that you can make into business. And then they have funding to help you to start up your business. Sometimes they might even provide you with a venue or location. So previously there was that location under the National Stadium bridge, stairs. So there's a few places there. So that's under KKBS. So there is some funding. So this, the one on the right is news on the YDC Lights On. So the Youth Development Resources Lights On. So basically their entrepreneurship funding project. So this is not straightforward. You have to go join the training first, and then you can potentially get funding to start up whatever business that you want. Then there's their co-matching grant. So to find out more, just go to dare.gov.bn/finance. So there's two schemes. I don't remember which one was first. One was in 2015, and then one was launched during, I think, the first wave of COVID. So there's the startup co-matching scheme, and then there's the expansion. So so the two categories. So starting up, so you're not more than 12 months old. So any more than 12 months, then you can apply for the expansion. And then you can see targeted to, okay. So the funding is 70% for starting up to $10,000, while the expansion is 70% of $20,000. So simply put, you have to have money. Similar to a bank, but the thing is, you have to have money in order to get the rest of that money. So in this case, simply, let's just say simple number, 7,000. So if you have $3,000 in the bank, then you can you can apply for $7,000. But of course, keep in mind this cash may not be given to you directly in hand. It might just go straight to your suppliers. So you have to prepare a lot of requirements. So let's look on the right side. So there's a few criteria for starting up and expansion. So fewer than 20 employees for the starting up, and you have to join the programs under there. So specifically the bootcamp programs such as Accelerator or Micro Bootcamp. And we do have a deal with there. So if you've joined our programs, there might be an exemption. Then criteria for expansion is less than 100. So if you're less than 20, it still applies. But you must practice proper bookkeeping and able to provide applicable financial records. So you have to keep your profit and loss statements. And you have to, if you're a sole proprietor, recommended to convert to Sindrian Berhad. Recommended but not mandatory. And you can see the eligible expenses. So you can see there are things that you can apply for and the things that you can't apply for. So you can apply for licenses and certification, consultancy, machines and equipment, marketing expenses, and adoption of new technology. But what you can't apply, or it's truncated there. So to pay off your loans, you're not allowed for a payment for the owners, or the salary, or service fee to individuals, or renovation, and so on. I think again, you can find out most of the information there. And on the bottom is how you apply. So there's an application form, and then you have to prepare the documents, which includes business proposals. So you send an email to that email, financing@dare.gov.bn. So there's a whole process down there. Okay, so that's there's core matching grant. Again, for more information, you can check the website, or you can email them, or I think they do provide a phone number for you to call up. Then the last one I put in is US Embassy grants. So again, for the one I'm sharing right now has expired. So you can't really apply it now. But annually, there's usually a sort of grant program that's provided by the US Embassy, provided by the US government. So it's usually for something helpful for the environment, or on education, or culture and arts, or journalism. So you can check it out on the US Embassy website, so bn.usembassy.gov. So maybe there's something new, then you can apply for it. So this last one was this April 30th, 2021. So another one is overdue soon. So we'll see. And on the right side, I'm just sharing. So one of the projects funded by these grants. So this was, oh, actually this is recent. So probably from the previous funding. So they closed. I think this was the closing ceremony for that event. So this was actually was from Pony Divers. So as mentioned, so this is actually for non-profit, but companies do often apply for these grants to do non-profit activities. Again, for the purposes that was outlined earlier, either for environment, education, culture and arts, or journalism. Okay. Now the last source of funding here, crowdfunding. So you have the platforms. Okay. The international ones such as Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and then we have the local one, Jana Capital. And then there's also pre-orders. So I won't be talking too much about the pre-orders later. So I'm just gonna cover the platforms after this. So in terms of pre-orders, this is one way, basically how Kickstarter works in the first place. So you have a project, then you get your customers, your future customers, to buy first, and then once you finish that project, you finish the product, then you sell it to the customer. So the similar concept has been done before, individually, by individual businesses. So they open up a shop online, they offer it without having the stock. Once they get the orders, then they buy from the supplier to sell to the customer. Another example is catering, where you offer catering services, and then you request for a minimum deposit. So you use that deposit to actually cover the cost of running that catering business. So again, you get paid before you do the business. Okay, but of course the payment is to get all the things that you need in order to do that business. So crowdfunding is again a way to raise funds from a large number of people. So again, it's using the internet, and there's a lot of people who's using the internet. So the contributions are made through online platforms to support a cause. That's just for free. That's a grant, or for exchange for products, or products or equity or debt. Okay, good examples is Kickstarter. There's a few other examples in this list. Okay, so it can be either equity or debt. The options varies country to country and platform to platform. So let's look at Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So unfortunately, last time I checked Kickstarter, if you want to register, there's no option for Brunei, unfortunately. I think especially because we in Brunei do not have the ability to receive payment by PayPal. That's the biggest, I would say, the biggest roadblock to applying for Kickstarter. But interestingly, when I was looking into Indiegogo, last time I checked a few years ago, there is that option to register from Brunei. So that is a potential platform that Bruneians can use. I haven't gone through the whole process to check how it works. in total. But looks like we in Brunei can use Indiegogo. But in Brunei, we can probably just use Jana Capital. So you can find out from janacapital.com. So they're using peer-to-peer lending platform. So basically equity funding. So you, as an MSME or investor, you can subscribe and then provide with the documentations required, and then you share your project. That's not that different from Kickstarter. But it's usually for businesses. They get funding for the business once. In order to be listed as a company, you have to pay first a minimal fee. I think like $100 or something. Again, check the website out, and then it gets listed once there's a lot of people who completely funds your business to your target goal. Then you can start off your business. Okay. So again, check it out, janacapital.com. Okay, so other crowdfunding platforms globally, as I mentioned, there's Kickstarter and Indiegogo. You might have heard of these other ones like GoFundMe, and there's also Patreon and a few other familiar names. I just added Jenny Capital there on the far right, okay, for Brunei. Okay, so that's crowdfunding. So let me check with the viewers. Okay, what sources of funding are you interested in? So you can choose one or more. You're not limited in your options. So in general, most people when they start a business, they'll just use their own funds. Me personally, I use my own funds to to start a small food stall business. But once there was an event, I needed a bit more capital, so I borrowed money from my sister, which I paid off in a few weeks later. And then some people need more, so then there's an option of the personal finance, as mentioned, not recommended, but it's been done. So you use either credit card or your personal loan to borrow money for the business. But recommended, if it's for business, then it's recommended to use the business loan. So in general, I think the business loan is probably cheaper than the personal loan. It's more safer. But of course, it's more difficult to get. So that's why some people go for personal financing rather than business financing. And then I am personally interested in looking to the janacapital.com. As mentioned, one of my business is swimming classes, and because of COVID, my swimming classes are at down at the low. So I'm tempted, not yet, to maybe get funding to make a swimming pool at my house. I do have the space for a swimming pool, so I might consider having funds to have a swimming pool rather than relying on the national swimming pool. Okay, yeah. So there's an answer of mixture. So what are the mixture? Just checking your feedback. Okay, so this is second last part, requirements for funding. Okay. Okay, so basic question is, what do you need in order to get funding? So in order to get that money, you'll need some things first. Okay, so in order to get that funding, you have to have a plan, whether it's a business plan, marketing plan, or a business proposal, or a pitch deck. As mentioned, when you meet up an investor, they might want to know more, so you have to be prepared. You have to know what you're planning to do with the money. And then the finances. So how much would it cost? Okay, you can just ask for money. You need to ask for how much money, and then you might want to share the projections, how much money you can make from that investment, and then the offer. So whether it's debt or equity. And then in some cases like banks, you have to consider collateral. So previously it's just land or house, but recently I think there was some legal changes, so you can actually use your car as a collateral. But I'm not sure how much you can get funding for a car as a collateral. And then there's of course some initial seed funds. So even before getting those funds, you need to have some initial funds to pay off. So example, for example, like banks, they only loan to registered business, so you have to register your business. So that's usually about $30 for sole proprietor or $300 for student Bahad. And then admin fees for example, like I think the Jana Capital, you have to spend $100 in order to be listed onto the platform. So again, you have to have that initial funds. So you probably have to use your own money or have a small angel investor to get the funds in order to get more funds. Okay, so let's look at the plan. So we do have a workshop on writing a business plan. So again, planning your business, and then we also have a workshop on business model canvas. So banks in general will want a business plan. Most new investors nowadays, they're okay with either a pitch deck or a business model canvas or a lean canvas. So just basic simple example as much as soon as possible. So bankers would need more information than venture capitalists and investors do. So again, depends on who you're talking to, who you're asking from. Double check, make sure you get what they need. So if a bank requires business plan, then you have to prepare a business plan. If an investor is okay with a business model canvas, just provide them with the business model canvas. So I'm just curious on how many people in the viewers know how to make a business plan or a business model canvas or a pitch deck. So if you don't, then highly recommend join our LiveWIRE programs, which I'll share later. Okay, and then there's the finances. In this case, is the startup. So again, it's not enough to ask for money. You need to ask for a specific amount, and with that amount, you have to identify how much you need for what. So on the left here, I have a simple table for a simple gerai business or a nasi katak business. You can categorize it, and in general, these are the categories in a startup cost. So your assets purchase, the machines, the utensils, and everything. Stocks purchase, the raw materials, the expenses, whether it's one time or budget for monthly. And then the total, and on the right side is just a pie chart of the items. So assets purchase, expenses, and stocks purchase, and depends on your business. Again, for food business, if you're targeting just to sell for one day, then you just budget for one day. If you're planning to do, let's just say, gerai perayaan, then that's just 2 weeks. And if you're planning to do gerai Ramadan, again, this is for food business. Gerai Ramadan will be 4 weeks. But if it's, let's just say, a bigger business like a farming business, then it's to the period of time that you expect your farm to be harvested. Or if it's a development business where you're building a house, then maybe it takes 1 year. So you have to calculate for 1 year of spending money to create that house. So I would say in general, building a house is not the raw materials that's expensive; it's the labor costs that's expensive. For how many people to how many months they spend there to build the house. Same thing with agriculture as well. Okay, so that's financial startup. Then there's the financial projections. So in terms of banks and the investors, they would want to know whether that business is profitable or not. You have to provide them with projections. Of course, this isn't 100% because it's just forecasting. But if you're an existing business, then you can just base it on a previous sales history. So then that's more realistic. But if it's a new business, especially for new product or services, then it's just projections. So you don't actually have to be accurate on this one. Again, it's just projections. But the more accurate you are, the more realistic you are, then the better your chances of getting funding. So if you don't know how to create the financial projections and the financial startup costs, again, we have the workshops in order for you to create those, specifically the business plan series. I'll share more on that later. Then now, knowing what you need to have to get funding, so you have to ask yourself: do you have enough to get funding? Do you have do you have the registered business? Do you have the history, the financial statements? Do you have the collateral if you need to? Okay, so what do you already have, and what are you still missing? So double check on that. And once you're confident, then you can go on to get that funding. But if you're still not sure whether you have it or not, or you don't know what they require, then of course you try to contact the banks or the investors, ask them what they want, ask them what they need. Okay, so finally, I'm just share LiveWIRE Brunei resources, so you can what you need. So what LiveWIRE can provide to you, what you need in order for you to get funding. So We have a lot of programs that help entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, to become successful, or even existing entrepreneurs to become more successful. If you just start a business, you don't know the rules and regulation, basic finances, then highly recommended to join Bright Ideas. So this is basically our basic entrepreneurship workshop. So you know what it requires to start up a business. Then there's the business plan series. That's where we teach people how to write our business plan so that they can apply to banks or to grants. So as mentioned, these are the programs, Bright Ideas and Business Plan series. These are the programs that we do for what we collaborate with other organizations such as Yayasan or Japim, so that the prospective recipients learn how to create the business plan so that they can apply for the grants. Okay, and then there's the master classes. There's several master classes. So the majority of the contents of what you saw here is in the raising early stage capital. So I didn't cover too much. I think I only covered like 25% of the content. And then there's cash and cost management. So this is useful if you need to prepare the financial statements to apply for the banks. And then there's the business model canvas or the lean canvas masterclass. We can create a simple business plan. Usually, again, useful for investors, especially the newer modern investors. And then there's pitching. So if you're not familiar or you're not confident in presenting your business plan or your pitch deck, then I highly recommend join that masterclass as well. Coincidentally, I think we have one scheduled for tomorrow. I'm not sure if the registrations are still open, but otherwise you can contact the contact number that's available on the registration page if you want to have a last minute registration. Or worst case langgar saja. And then we have hackathon. So these are, as mentioned, if you want to get networking, you get exposed so they can have access to angel investors or venture capitalists, or just network to get more people who might support your business. So join in competitions. So one of the competitions that we do is the LiveWIRE Hackathon. This is upcoming this upcoming weekend, and only open for higher institutions for now. Basically, in a short amount of time, they learn how to find ideas for business, plan their business, and then they basically present their business within that 3-day period. And there's also a cash prize. It depends. I'm not sure about this cycle, but usually there's a cash prize at the end to help as a seed capital to start off the business, to expand the business, or to get future funding. So look forward to for the news on the LiveWIRE Hackathon from this weekend. Then we have the business awards. So we should be launching either this month or next month. So this is our annual business awards competition, and I know a few of our alumni. Once they get exposed through the business awards competition, they do get contacted by investors. Sometimes with the recognition, they even can easily get funding or financing from the banks. So that is a good possibility. So join the business awards competition. So upcoming this year, and usually it takes about 3 to 6 months for between the launching and the deadline. So you have time to create your business plan. You have time to take up our workshops, to join our boot camps. Then to write up your business plan, and then to submit. And then, of course, once you submit, you present, and then in the end, there's the cash prizes. So keep in mind, you not just it's not, you don't just go in it for the cash prize. You also go in it for the recognition. I know a few entrepreneurs who like to join this competition so that they get more exposure, not just do through publications, news, and so on, but also they get exposure to more networks, to more people, to more angel investors. Okay, and then there's Bus FS. This is a continuation to the Business Awards. So we're revamping this for this year. So this is basically our financing scheme, our debt funding scheme. So basically, we lend you money and then you pay back, and then you can relatively easily start your business with that funding. Of course, keep in mind this is going to be revamped for this year, so terms and conditions here might not apply. Then we have the business network. So once you join our workshops, you're part of a network, so you can get network with other people. And some of those networks, you might be either meeting up with angel investors themselves or people who know angel investors. So again, the more people you know, the more likely you are able to find an angel investor. And a few more slides. So I've advertised this before in the previous episodes. So we have the iCashflow.bn app. But what's relevant here is you can actually use the iCashflow app to keep track of your finances, so money in, money out, and at the end you can export it to your email. So there you can have your financial statements ready. So this is one of the major weaknesses of most businesses. In order to get financing from the banks, they usually request for the financial statements, and most people don't have it, or if even if they do have the receipts and everything, they don't have it in a proper format that can be presented to the banks. So using this app, you can generally prepare your financial statements. So download it from the Google Play or the App Store. So you can scan the QR code to download the iCashflow app, whether it's for iPhone or for Android. Okay, so again, you can screenshot and then you can share later. Okay, so just checking chat for anything. Okay, no updates, no questions. Okay, now sharing the LiveWIRE Brunei alumni profiles ebook. So we did this for our 20-year anniversary. So you can find out more about our programs as well as our alumni. So you can scan the QR code to get the ebook. Okay, so again, you can screenshot the QR code, and then you can download the ebook and you can flip through it. So digital publication. Okay, and finally, for more updates on our programs, as mentioned, we have several workshops and events. Just go to our website at livewirebrunei.com or on our IG and FB, LiveWire Brunei. Or if you want to meet up personally, you can go to our office at the Progressive HQ around the roundabout. But this is the third wave of the pandemic, although it's going down. Okay, but we are limiting our physical interactions. But in some cases, there are things that we can't just say through online or through email. There are things that we just need physical interaction to do so. So in that case, just contact us through our social media or website to get an appointment to meet up with us. I think some of you might even have our contact numbers. Okay, so just a question for you is, what are the programs that interest you, if you are? Just checking here on the viewers and the chat. Okay, so those are a lot of programs I shared earlier. So what would be the programs that you're interested in, if you are? Okay, so just ending up with the planned content. So just reminding of the planned content. So we've done introduction to entrepreneurship, business ideas and opportunities, and just now we've done sources of funding. So next up coming is legal considerations in doing business in Brunei. So apparently one of the legal considerations is if we're giving legal talks, we need to have legal counsel or legal advisors or legal practitioners involved. So expect when we do that talk to have a more of a forum for that legal considerations. So I would highly recommend for you to sign up for the next one, or at least to be notified of the next one, and ask legal questions that you may have. So usually we'll be sharing on registering your business, whether it's sole proprietor or Senen Bahad. As mentioned, you have to be registered in order to get some bank loans, or you need to have certifications or licenses in order to run the business, to loan and then run the business. Or I think in the co-matching grant, you might notice you may get funding for those legal licenses and permits as well. So what are those legal licenses and permits that you need for your business? So look out for that talk next month. So mostly that's gonna be in during the fasting month. So I'm gonna be super thirsty while talking. So I should probably save my energy for most of that day. So again, keep an eye out for that next talk. Okay. So thank you for stating in chat. Okay, so one person interested in BMC. So look out for our business model canvas workshop soon. Okay, so that basically ends the presentation. So if I have any questions, I'm just gonna be up. Still gonna be online for a few more minutes. So just have any chat. Well, I remember I missed out the Bank Usahawan website. I'm just gonna open up the browser for Bank Usahawan and then put the Bank Usahawan. What is the website address? Is it usahawan.com.bn? Oh, bankusahawan.com.bn. So I'm just gonna maybe I can do that. Window capture browser. Okay, browser. Oh wait, no, this what? Oh, I'll just put window. Browser. Okay, just sharing on screen. Oops, nampak my tabs. Gila banyak tabs. Okay, so that's the Bank Usahawan. So unfortunately, the website does not have a lot of information. So you can just browse through it. I think it's basically a one pager, but you can contact them. There's the contact information. They're basically at the old post office at Bandar. They also have an office at there, and there's also a KB branch, and then there's the phone numbers. So basically, this was actually built, developed, built, set up. It was set up after His Majesty requested for an SME bank. So not long after the Bank Usahawan was formed. So in general, they're supposed to help SMEs, but for now, they've only been able to help like the other banks. They're mostly helping businesses that have run for at least 1 year. But recently, I've met a few people who said even for businesses that 6 months are also being supported. So you can check them out as well. Ooh, that's an interesting question. How to get mentorship? That's an interesting question. In terms of LiveWire, once you join up our workshops, you can actually request for the facilitators to become your mentors. So I also technically mentor a few people as well. But I'm more of a lazy absentee type of mentor. So I'm like, I tell you this, you do your research, done. Just double check saja if you want me to check anything, just email me or WhatsApp me when I'm available. I'll go check. Then there's also the other facilitators. So there's Afiq Muhammad, and then there's Jimmy Nur Azima, and a few others. Oh, our program director, of course, Haji Abdul Yusrin. So usually we are open to help and mentor people. Otherwise, there's also the LWBN, our business network. So when you get to know our members, they're either aspiring entrepreneurs or successful entrepreneurs already. Keep in mind, LiveWire has been around since 2010. Sorry, not 2010. 2001. I've been working for LiveWire since 2010, but LiveWire has been around since 2001. So there's a few other successful um, entrepreneurs as well. So you can actually learn from them. So we can connect you with them again in the networking events, and if you want, you can request them to become your mentors. Okay. Otherwise, other outside of LiveWire, there's also the B-Man under there. So the Brunei mentors. So I'm also listed there as a Brunei mentor. I think some of our business councils are also listed there as a mentor. And I think yes, the upcoming hackathon. So we'll be doing a speed mentoring session, but well, the previous one we did a speed mentoring session. We are very likely to do a speed mentoring session, and from that speed mentoring session, you may request for specific well, officers or mentors to be your long-term mentors as well. Okay, so that's on how to get mentorship. So just might as well since mentioned about the mentorship. So Beamman, let me open up again my browser window. So Beamman, yes, Beamman, no, Brunei mentors. Oh, I should okay. So there was a project under ICV and LiveWIRE as well. We have the Mentor with Us app. I should probably promote that as well soon. Anyway, so the idea was to have our members to use that app to connect with mentors and mentees. So if people want to be mentors can mentor people, and people want to be mentees can become mentees. So just sharing the Brunei mentors under there. So if you're interested, usually they do events as well. So like speed mentoring events, and then they pair you up. So you can look it up, and then yeah, just check BruneiMentors.com. So to be informed of any events or to have a mentor, then just sign up. Okay, so we have an LiveWire, we have an informal method of mentoring. So it's either through the workshops or the business networks. But Brunei Mentors has a more active, more direct way of having mentorship. Okay, so that's basically me sharing the BMEN, the Brunei Mentors for Entrepreneurs Network from Darussalam Enterprise. Okay, thank you for that question. Okay, so just checking if there's any more questions. Yeah. Okay, so what's the name of the app? Okay, it's Mentor with Us. Let me check. So the app that's from LiveWire. Let me check. Google Play Store, play.google.com. Mentor with Us. Mentor with Us. I think interestingly, there's several Mentor with Us. So I have to pinpoint the exact one for you guys. Should be already up and running. What the? Did I press enter the wrong way? Okay. Admin, keep remind me to like trim this part. Why did that show? Oh, okay. So it's the only one. I seem to remember there were a few Mentor with Us apps. So obviously you can see that it's also already installed on my computer. So this was previously launched, but now it's under what would you call it? Renovation. It's being revamped. That's the word, revamp. So as you can see, this is the old LiveWire logo. So soon it'll be revamped, and well, it has already been revamped. It just hasn't been launched. It should be this year launch, but you can probably download and access it, use whatever features, and maybe if there's still users. I haven't checked on it for a while. So just check it out. Can I? Is there a way for me to do? Oh no, I think I can QR code, right? There's a way for QR code from. Oh no, this share QR code. So I'll for your convenience, I'll just put a QR code to this Google Play. I hope you're using Android. If you're not using Android, then I think there's an iPhone version. So probably can check from the source again. Oh, oops. So I hope you're able to check the QR code again. So I'll just leave that for a while, screenshot it, and then you can use it. But I think I can look for the iPhone, the iOS version as well. Where's the iOS version? Where's the Nope. Okay, so that's next to our Cashflow app. Sorry, I can't at this point I don't know how to access the the iOS link. So good luck on that. Where do I access the? I don't think I can. I don't know. Maybe we should do that. So we should have a link to for people with iOS to access it. Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Okay, mentor with us. Oh, thank you for providing the link as well. Okay. Huh. Okay. So, wow, it's 4 o'clock. Usually I finish right on time, like 3:30. But this is like 1:30. I assume the press conference is around 4 as well. So I think ngam lah. Okay. So no other questions. Okay. Thank you, admin, for providing the link as well. Okay. So if no other questions, then I think I'll end the talk there. So keep in mind, we'll edit the video as necessary, and then we'll repost it on the channel, on the LiveWire YouTube channel, so you can access the previous videos as well. So the episode 1, 2, and the current one, 3, you can access it from the YouTube channel, from the LiveWire YouTube channel. Okay, so if nothing else, thank you very much for your attendance. I hope the information was useful, so that you can get funding or easily get more funding, or at least know more about how to get funding in Brunei or all around the world. Okay, I think I'll end the stream. Okay, again, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.